BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting in 2025. So whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selections of odds on everything from NBA and college basketball to NHL and UFC. BetOnline continues to be your number one sport betting source. So from every three-pointer to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with all the odds, stats, and more from every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Bleav in Bengals podcast with yours truly, Solomon Wilcots, and my good friend and our insider, Charlie Goldsmith. Charlie, how you doing after a week at the NFL Scouting Combine? You all rested and ready to go?
Feel like the hot stove is on.
Absolutely. Look, Cincinnati Bengals were the talk all of the week that I was in Indianapolis for the Scouting Combine. And it was more about what is expected to happen in free agency, more so than what is going to happen in the draft. You and I both know that's where all the agents are, all the general managers, so many members of the media there. And I'm interested to maybe hear some of the things you were hearing. You know, the business gets done at all the steak houses in Indianapolis the week of the Combine. So fill us in on maybe some of the things that you're hearing if you can.
This isn't a scoop. This isn't hard news, and usually I don't like to kick around stuff like this, but here we go. What I heard behind the scenes made me more confident that Tee Higgins will be a Bengal in 2025. In addition to everything that Duke Tobin said up at the press conference, at the podium, and everything that Zach Taylor said publicly as well, what I heard from a Bengals perspective and from a league perspective, again, gave me more confidence that Tee Higgins would be a Bengal. And that creates a lot of, interesting ripple effects. The offseason with Higgins obviously looks a lot different than the offseason contingency plan that you'd have in place without Higgins. I'll add one more thing too. It's kind of the importance of the tight end position. All right, you have Jamar, you have T, but can they establish that physicality up front by mixing personnel groupings like they did in 2024 when Eric All was healthy? That was also something that was discussed kind of behind the scenes.
Wow, I love that. So we could see a different type of tight end than a Mike Gesicki, one who can help control the line of scrimmage, but also impact the passing game as well. Eric All, as you well know, had a setback from the injury that ended his season 1 year ago. We don't know when he'll be back, but we're going to keep our fingers crossed. Look, at the time of this recording, we're about, 24 hours away from the deadline for the Bengals to use the franchise tag. We're hearing from reports out of there that it's not a real negotiation as much as it is the Bengals are going to go ahead and use the tag for the second time and then maybe hope to get the contract done. What are you hearing when it comes to that?
Well, Duke Tobin's message at the Combine was all about urgency. If the Bengals get this deal done with Higgins before the start of free agency, that can open up the cap space to go out and sign another player, which goes a long way. The ability, again, to open up cap space which would be reworking Higgins' contract. He wouldn't be playing on the tag. He'd be playing on a long-term deal where the money's more spread out and the cap hits are more managed. That would go a long way towards helping the Bengals, and that seems to be what Duke Tobin's preference would be. Now they've got to get it done, and that's the thing. Like, if they don't get it done, that's a huge, massive strikeout, not just a swing and miss on behalf of the front office. Again, urgency was the message, but of course it's not that simple. It's never been that simple. That's why these discussions have lasted 3 years. It's up to the Bengals to find enough common ground to be able to get this deal done with T to accomplish everything they need to this offseason. And that's on the front office. That's on ownership to make sure they get across the finish line.
Yeah, we're also hearing that contract talks have not gone much further than the initial stages, even with Jamar Chase. We're now 2 years on the negotiations with the Triple Crown winner from 1 year ago. This, for many people, as you well know, all the talk in Indy, should be a no-brainer. So why is it taking so long? Why are the talks getting nowhere?
I would assume it's because of what it's always about, which is guaranteed money with the Bengals, who have a long track record of not going above and beyond outside of Joe Burrow in the history of the franchise and guaranteeing money, which, especially in a league these days where you see contracts restructured right and left, guaranteed money has never been more important. Now, it was funny that the tone was almost pleased to Jamar Chase. Like, it's funny, like Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor both went out and said, Jamar, we want to make you the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. Like, they didn't even say that they were going to make Joe Burrow the highest paid quarterback in the league when they were publicly talking about where those negotiations stood. So they want to use Justin Jefferson as a framework. Obviously, Jamar showed that he's worth more than that this season. And who knows if, Jamar is such a talented player that maybe he wants to reshape the market in a completely different way. But Tobin was stressing that, if you go that far, then that takes away from your ability to build a championship roster. And that's why this negotiation is still ongoing. But listen, Jamar's earned what he's asking for. The Bengals are paying for not getting this deal done last season.
Yeah.
And they can't have another distraction or whatever you want to say in training camp by not having your, one of your best players on the field like they had last year.
Are you getting a sense that even the league at the sort of a more big picture level wants to see this gets done in Cincinnati simply because, look, you've seen all the top quarterbacks now play in the international series over in Europe, whether it's over in Germany, whether it's over in London. And what I'm hearing is that when the new schedule comes out, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, the league wants to showcase what we have here in Cincinnati between the quarterback and the wide receiver and put them in that international series. But you and I both know from a scheduling standpoint, when contracts are yet to be done, it's kind of one of those deals, let's wait and see. But they've done that now for maybe the last 2 to 3 years. Are you getting a sense that there's some angst growing, particularly amongst the national media and the league itself, wanting to see the Cincinnati Bengals business get done and become more solidified?
Here's what I know. I know that nobody that I've talked to throughout a lot of different places has any doubt that Jamar Chase is going to be a Bengal in the long term. Mm-hmm. And that's an important part of this conversation as well. Like, it's not like Jamar is going to hit the market in 2 years. Certainly. And the Bengals, I don't think would ever entertain trading him. I think this is going to get done. But the fact that it hasn't, and the delay and the pause creates some unnecessary friction. But as terms of an end result, I don't see any long-term ramifications of that because of the confidence that Chase will remain a Bengal.
Right now, Jamar Chase, that is under contract for the 2025 season. It was about this time last year where the Bengals decided to pick up his 5th-year option. He'll make somewhere close to $26 million over the course of the 2025 season. But under that 5th-year option, which means he effectively has 1 year remaining on his rookie contract. So I agree with you. This will get done. It's just a matter of when. I think maybe for the big picture, for many of us Bengal fans who went through it last year and the year before when they signed Joe Burrow, within that 24-hour window before playing the very first game of the season, and it didn't happen with Jamar Chase. I think Bengals fans just say, look, can we go into the 2025 season without any distractions? Can we have this unification between the front office and the players heading into the season so that we can put our best foot forward to getting off to the fast start? You and I both know that's going to be the topic of conversation throughout the offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's something the Bengals are making tangible changes to fix. It's funny, like they did have realistic excuses every year. Like Burrow had the appendectomy, Burrow had the calf. They had poor offensive line play to start. Well, how big of a reason for that was, Collins and Trent Brown basically opting out of a huge chunk of training camp. Alex Cappa was banged up in camp 1 year. Like, they've had reasonable excuses for these slow starts. And last year, another one of those excuses was the contract stuff. Chase did not play like Jamar Chase in week 1 against the Patriots, and that showed up. But the Bengals are kind of done with that excuse game. They're saying it's time for tangible changes. At the end of the day, there's a trend, and you can't keep talking yourself out of it. So from an OTA's perspective, from a hitting perspective, from a physicality perspective, from a preseason perspective, I expect changes there. But like I was saying, the contract stuff ties in with this as well. The Bengals were impacted by contract frustration tangibly on the field in week 1 with how Jamar looked. Trey Hendrickson missed time in camp, and he didn't play his best game either. And he wanted a new deal. Like, it's something that you can't see happen again in 2025.
Absolutely. Considering one more win and they're in the playoffs, I don't think you can take it for granted that, oh, we'll be okay. No, let's get business taken care of so that the team can put its best foot forward. I just heard you mention offensive guard Alex Cappa. Cincinnati Bengals have announced that they have released the veteran offensive lineman who has spent, the last 3 seasons with the Cincinnati Bengals, had his first 4 years in his career with Tampa, was on that Super Bowl team with Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I thought during the early phase of his time spent here, he was a real upgrade, right? Last year, 2024, wasn't as great, but he started 50 games for the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to ask you, will he be missed? And what now that we have a hole in the middle of this offensive line? I sense they were looking to kind of add an upgrade there anyway, but now it's clear there's a strong need there.
What the Bengals need is 2022 Alex Cappa on their offensive line. And unfortunately in the NFL, that's life. Like, I think that Alex Cappa, if he hadn't hurt his ankle in 2022, I think the Bengals win the Super Bowl. I think he was that good that year. And I think their lack of depth got that much exposed. Then in 2024, like, they benched Volson. Honestly, I thought Cappa deserved to be benched more than Cordell Volson did, but he was such a key veteran, such a big communicator, that they didn't want to go in that direction, and I completely understand that. Guard's a massive need.
Yeah.
I like the name Patrick McCurry. I like the name Aaron Banks. I like the name Brandon Scherf, Ben Bredenson. There's a fine class of veteran, durable, tough, experienced, pass protection-focused guards who are just better than Cappa is. And if you can free up $9 million in cap space, again, that's an unfortunate reality in the NFL. And tell Jamar Chase, that's why people like guaranteed money. And Cappa, his Bengals crew, is a success. It's the most interesting thing to me, too, is before they signed Cappa, the Bengals were the team that didn't pay guards. They did not pay guards. They wouldn't do it. Then they pay Cappa, and his deal was a success. And I think they'll continue to be willing to pay guards heading into the future.
And look, I think it's very important that the Cincinnati Bengals, everybody knows we need good offensive tackles, but our quarterback can move. He's not just a stationary guy, but as you well know, Joe likes to operate inside the pocket. And when he wants to get out of there, he doesn't look to escape to his right or to his left. He climbs the pocket. He presses the line of scrimmage. That way, if he pops through, he can run it. If he pops through and it's more clear vision down to throw the ball downfield. Or if he's sacked, it's only a 2-yard loss, not a 10-yard loss. He presses the line of scrimmage as well as any quarterback in the NFL. What does that mean? They need to be strong up the middle, Charlie. They've got to be strong at the center and both guard positions when it comes to pass protection. So I think this is a vitally important move. It'll be interesting to see how they go about filling it. I want to ask you, because we are just leaving the NFL scouting combine, was there one player that intrigued you as maybe, not that they're going to use the first round pick on it, but just at any point in time that intrigued you as, wow, that would be a Cincinnati Bengal type player? It'd be great to have that player, no matter what round we had to get him in, he would be a good fit for the Cincinnati Bengals. If there was one player that maybe caught your eye, who would that be?
I'm going to answer a little more generally because, to be honest, I'm not quite there yet from an evaluation, from studying the draft prospects yet. What I will say is seeing these defensive linemen, and more importantly, talking around the league and even talking with some Bengals people about this class of defensive linemen. But I was told that most years there's like 2 or 3, and then there's a big drop off specifically at defensive tackle. This year, there is not that. This year's defensive tackle class is what last year's offensive tackle class was. And because of what that class was, that got him Marius Mims, to pick 19 when the Bengals got him, or pick 17 when the Bengals got him. So I see a similar train going on the defensive line this season with the depth, with the talent, and with the different styles. I feel a lot better than I did going in, that the Bengals are going to be able to find someone who specifically fits them, honestly, at both end and tackle between day 1 and day 2 of the draft.
I'm going to go with a safety. And again, this doesn't have to occur at the 17th overall pick. It could be maybe in the 2nd round or 3rd round. But Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, to me, he's a guy that's worked with Al Golden. He knows the defense. He's multiple and versatile. He's a true safety, but he's got good ball skills, a good football IQ, and I think would be a day one starter from the time that you put the card in to the commissioner to select Xavier Watts, the safety from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Again, doesn't have to be a first-round pick. He might be there in the second round. Nick Imawari from the safety from South Carolina. You know, we call the defensive backs the decathletes of the NFL, Charlie. And this guy is a true decathlete. 6'3", 222 pounds. He reminds me of an athletic David Fulcher. The guy had a, 11.6 standing broad jump, 43-inch vertical. Was phenomenal in terms of his speed, ran a 4.38 in the 40. He had by far one of the most impressive training camps, or I should say, combine camp that I've ever seen. Now, if you don't think he's a ball player because it's more than just the underwear Olympics, the guy was an All-American last year, and he had 2 pick sixes playing during the 2024 season for South Carolina. So this is a guy that's got skill. He's explosive. He's powerful. Wouldn't it be great to have an athlete like that in the Cincinnati Bengals secondary? Something
they desperately need because Geno Stone did some fine things Geno Stone is not a dynamic free safety. And what I've been thinking a lot about is how free agency and the draft fit together from a Bengals perspective. I don't think at any position is that more intriguing than safety.
Yeah.
I like the free agent class of safeties. I think there's free safety specifically. I think there's some nice depth. I think there's some good athleticism. There are better ball skills and tackling ability than the Bengals have in Stone. Is that a position they'd be willing to go up to $12 million for? Frankly, I don't have that answer yet, but it's a really interesting debate to consider. If they don't get that type of player, all right, then you're not cutting Geno Stone, but then you're going into the draft probably looking for a free safety exactly like the ones you were mentioning who could take over for Geno Stone and end up supplanting him by the end of the year. So there are a lot of different avenues the Bengals could go at free safety and definitely some intriguing options in the draft as well.
All right, Charlie. Last week when we were at the scouting combine, the 2025 NFL Players Association survey was released. Look, I got the categories, okay? And so I want you to help me to parse maybe why the players decided to go with this grade.
Can I ask you a question first?
Yeah, absolutely.
What were the family accommodations? I'm just curious. What were the family accommodations? They got an F- in that. What were the family accommodations for you?
There were none. there were no family accommodations. I mean, you didn't go to the front office and say, hey, my family's in town, or the wife wants to come to the game, but the kids are still at the infant stage or their toddler stage. Do we have, daycare for that during the game? Now, let me just share this with you. A lot of teams in the NFL have it. This is what is common in the workplace, as you well know it. Companies like Google, Microsoft, and Apple, the work-life balance really matters in our country today. I don't know that that's universal with all 32 teams in the NFL. I think each and every last one of them, as you well know, they operate independently. And when they hear about what other teams are doing, they may scoff at it, or they may say, oh, that's a great idea. Let's implement it. Maybe it takes them more than a year to implement it. But if you look at treatment of families, now this is not a Solomon Wilcots survey. This is the current Bengals players voting and giving a grade to their team. The Bengals got an F, which I think it's something you got to pay attention to. Food and dining area, they scored another low grade. They scored an F there. Nutritional and dietitian, they got a C. The locker room, as you well know, I know Katie Blackburn, that was very important to her to upgrade that area. And they did a wonderful job improving the locker room. Anybody goes through there, you're like, wow, I think I want to stay tonight. It's really nice. And they scored an A. The training room, they scored a B+. The training staff got an A. How about this? Strength and conditioning coaches and the head coach, Zach Taylor, got an A. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the headliner here is the family accommodations. It's interesting. Like, I also cover the Reds, and the Reds go all in on family accommodations.
Yeah.
They have family team events. They have groups, with the wives and the kids of the players, where they do lots of different things. They have activities. There are dedicated people facilitating it. And it really, like Frankie Montas is a great example. I know this isn't a Reds podcast, but Frankie Montas was the Reds opening day starter last year, and he felt such a comfort in Cincinnati because of all that the Reds did to support his family and to welcome him into the city. Yeah. And that stuff matters. And you see that stuff matters. That stuff made Frankie consider coming back to the Reds when he was a free agent. Then they just didn't want to go there with the contract. And again, this isn't a Reds podcast, but these are professional athletes, and the reputation you have for this kind of stuff matters. Now, the Bengals have a track record of listening and acting on the feedback they get here. They upgraded the locker room. They upgraded the training room.
Yep.
They've made efforts to upgrade the family accommodations, changing where the players meet up with their families after games. And now they have a system where they can congregate at the suite level, which has, from what I can tell, it's not perfect. The elevator system's kind of tough to navigate, and the players kind of have to run all over the place. And I mean, there used to be a tent where, like, an outdoor tent where you had to meet your families in 10-degree weather. Like, that wasn't good.
That wasn't good.
So there's room to grow. I don't get the sense that they're like, turning their hand to the Bengals players when they get this feedback. And hopefully, for everyone's sake, it can really matter if they make some tangible upgrades.
Bengals ownership got a C grade. I don't know. I like the ownership group. But listen, it's the players who voted on this. And I do think you have to kind of take to heart what they say. I guess there are some things I'd love to hear why or in what way they feel ownership could be better. Maybe that ties back to treatment of families, right? And the dining room. I think we tend to look at ownership. If you're a player, you tend to look at ownership through that lens. I'll give you an example. At the end of my career, I finished up in Pittsburgh, and I just get to the team. And I remember walking on we were playing a game over in Spain. And I remember, getting on the team plane. It was like a preseason game, right? But we were over in Spain. I get on the plane, and I'm just going to walk right to the back. I'm thinking, they were like, no, you're up front. I was like, what? No, veteran players have first class. I'm like, get out of here. No way. Mr. Rooney and his family, they're in the back of the plane. I was dumbfounded, blown away, Charlie. I was like, you mean to tell me the owner gives up his seat in first class for the players? He says the players are bigger. These guys need the space more than anyone. And I remember being on many flights where Anthony Munoz and Max Montoya, they were behind Eric Thomas and I. And I remember I couldn't lean back in my chair because I had Anthony Munoz behind me and Max. I was never going to lay my seat back. No way. I was like, I couldn't do it to him. And I would always tell them, you guys shouldn't even be back here. You should be up front. I would, as a defensive back, I could tell you right now, I would give my first class seat up to my offensive lineman and to my defensive lineman guys. These guys are huge. You've seen them. There's no way they would fit in an average seat in coach. But so I really do believe those are some of the things that the players, when they look at treatment of families, when they look at some of the other items in terms of ownership, because I don't think the Bengals ownership group treat the players poorly. In fact, I know they don't. But I would wonder how they came to their grade of a C. There's some nuance to that, and there's probably needs to be more specific questions. What has been some of the things that you have seen?
I know they care and they're willing to make changes, but not to say the Bengals were behind, but you told a story that kind of highlighted some of that. They've got a lot of ground to make up.
Yeah.
And there was a lot, like even as soon as when Zach came in, he inherited a lot on his plate that he had to help fix. Like the Bengals didn't used to do free agency. before, and it wasn't all because of Zach that they started, but before there was a modernization of the way the front office operated that coincided with Zach Taylor, during that same window. So,
yeah,
the locker room, all this stuff, they still need a practice, or they got a practice facility. That was something they needed. Like, there's been all of this stuff that they've had to catch up on that makes them still not perfect grading wise. And again, they're changing and they're embracing some of it. Is there more they can do? Of course. And it's important to get that player feedback. The Bengals have acted on that player feedback. But probably because of how much catch-up there is to do, they're still not there yet.
Well, I will say this is a huge offseason for the Cincinnati Bengals, particularly for the front office. You and I have kind of talked about this, making sure that the team has everything they need to be energized, to be focused, and get off to a fast start in 2025. All eyes of the entire National Football League is on this place. They are paying attention to the Cincinnati Bengals, mainly because they want some of their players. Secondly, they want to see how they're going to handle it in a way that's very professional, that allows them to be, a championship team. I do think this team is close to it. They've got some moves to make, some holes to fill, but I think they're up to the challenge. That's why this is going to be a fun offseason, Charlie. I want to thank you for joining us yet again. Always appreciate your insights. We appreciate everyone joining us yet again right here on the Bleav in Bengal podcast. We'll see you again next week.